Message to the chair, we are now live streaming. Thank you.
I'm not going to do a roll call because I have everyone sitting at the desk this evening, but I will just for people watching online because I realize you can't see the entire council. Everyone on council is here this evening. We have no in-camera resolutions to release this evening. And so that takes me to 3, which is the approval of the near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting for October 18th. I will see if there are any objections to the approval of the agenda and the receipt of the near and long-term agendas. Seeing no objections, then I will state that that has been accepted unanimously by this council. Moving on to 4, public participation. We have 2 written submissions which were received by council in opposition proposing park regulations to the rezoning application at 3354 Ryder Hechtel Way from the Royal Bay Homeowners Association and from the West Commons Strata Corp. These submissions will be appended to the agenda to form part of the public record. One person, Nancy Patton, has registered to speak via telephone. Did she ever get on? She did not. So I will provide an opportunity for anyone in the public. We have 20 minutes for public participation. If anyone wishes to comment, I would encourage you to come up to the podium. Please turn on the mic when you come up, just so you know the camera will spin. And so you will be on camera. And I will ask that you please say your name and your address for the record. So is there anyone in public participation this evening? Please come up to the podium. Yes, sorry, John, just before you do, sorry, and you can stay there. I just have to read this. During public participations, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to present concerns or ask questions of council. Comments pertaining to the following matters that have been subject to a public hearing are prohibited at this meeting. Bylaw number 1892, CD 28 Zone Area 5 Amendment for Latoria South, and bylaw number 1898, Cannabis Retail, 1905 Souk Road. There are 20 minutes allocated for public participation. In the public, could you just raise your hand really quickly if you're intending? I'm not going to hold you to it. If you change your mind and don't want to speak, that's fine. It's just I have to divide it to make sure that there's an equal amount of time for everybody. So it looks like we only have we have 3 people. 3 people. I'm going to say 4, so I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. John, you have 5 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, John. If you hit it so it goes red.
Well, that, okay, thank you. My name is John English. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here on behalf of the Colwood homeowners and taxpayers who are members of the Royal Bay Homeowners Association. And we wish to speak on item 10.2 on the agenda, regarding the land use bylaw amendment for 3554 Ryder Hechtel Way. Throws me a bit because it used to be 360 Latoria, but I guess it's the same thing. District Group, as most of you know, purchased this property from Gablecraft Homes some time ago. It was the reason. Now, this is, they haven't told me this, but it's obvious that the reason that Gablecraft purchased the home from, District Group purchased the home from Gablecraft is because they wanted to exploit the mixed use designation for that property in the OCP. That property is the only property on the north side of Latoria to be designated mixed use in the OCP. The OCP had designated that property to be mixed use because it was intended to be developed as an important contributor and attraction for commercial development in Royal Bay. The city identified commercial development in Royal Bay as a priority in order to lessen the city's historic over-reliance on residential property taxation. All of the various proposals that district has presented for this property show that they have no intention at all of developing any significant commercial space on the property. As of today, the only potential commercial space appears to be a small space for a small convenience store. And the person I was with, we were looking at it, we observed that actually gas stations have larger convenience stores than what is apparently planned there, given the space provided. What district have been consistently proposing is mixed residential development in a property that has been designated for mixed use. So really, it's what they're planning is a residential development in something that was always intended to be mixed use. No developer has any right to expect the city and its citizens to agree to any changes to existing bylaws or zoning to enable the developer to make more money than what is possible under the bylaws and the zoning that existed when they purchased the property, particularly when doing so would damage the quality of life of Colwood citizens and taxpayers living in the area. Parking problems, congestion problems, and public safety problems have been reported as a growing concern for the last 2 years. The decision you will be making this evening as our elected representatives is pretty straightforward. Do you prioritize and support the best interests of the Colwood citizens and taxpayers over the excess financial ambitions of a Lower Mainland developer? Thank you very much.
I will welcome up the next person who wishes to comment.
Mayor, councillors, administrative staff. My name is Roger Conrad. I live at 309 Perimeter Place. I'm going to give you my Reader's Digest version of this. I'm concerned, I'm talking to 10.2 on the agenda about the parking and the density of that property. My concern is the higher densities are going to increase the traffic on our arterial routes. And right now, our neighbor to the north and to the west is looking at putting in 4 towers. Those towers and their location are going to mean the traffic is going to be pushed onto Veterans Memorial. As you know, Veterans Memorial right now at the north end is really congested. It's going to become more congested. And then you add to that Royal Beach and Royal Bay, where Colwood is hoping to have traffic go up Latoria to feed on to Veterans Memorial. That is going to be an impossible route to navigate with the amount of traffic we're putting on that. So I'm encouraging our council to stick to the original OCP, limit the amount of density, and if anything, increase the parking in Royal Bay and Royal Beach. Somebody told me that on Facebook, quite a few of the people in Royal Bay are very concerned about the parking. So the other night I drove down there and drove around. The parking is absolutely terrible. It is an embarrassment. People are suiting their homes, and those people have 2 cars, and their tenants have 2 or 3 cars. So in one lot, you may have 5 vehicles trying to find parking on a driveway that's no longer than 22 feet long. It is becoming just a nightmare down there. And I encourage council to stick to the original plans and keep density at its limit right now. And if anything, increase parking, don't decrease it. And I'll finish off by saying, we're never going to see vehicles disappear. We'll see a new form of vehicle. They'll either be electric or hydrogen powered. Japan last week opened up its first hydro station. Japan is actively pursuing hydrogen powered cars. That technology will soon be here. You won't see less cars. We're going to see more cars. So please stick to our original plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Ian Ward. I'm the president of the Strata Corporation at 370 Latoria, the West Commons. At a special council meeting, Strata Council meeting, that is, I was asked to speak on behalf of our 65 homeowners that are adjacent to 3554 Ryder Hedgedale, formerly 360 Latoria. First, I would just add that it's great to actually be here in person. Thank you for that opportunity. I think one of the challenges in the COVID environment has been the depersonalization of these type of meetings, which in turn leads to social media as the only medium. And I know some of you on council have felt that that's led to almost some personalization in terms of attacks on council when it comes to contentious issues like that. So if that is the impression that I personally have given, or anyone in our group, I will apologize for that. But again, thank you for the opportunity. So you will have received the package that we sent over today with a fairly rudimentary map. I just wanted to again draw attention to the on-street parking on Latoria. You'll note that from Caspian, I got the name wrong, but the street adjacent to the access to the Meadow Park Parkway, the first block up from Machosen. From there all the way up to Ryder Hedgedall, there is a total of 6 on-street recess parking spaces. That includes the spaces that are in front of the 32-unit Mariners Townhome Complex at 350 Latoria. So very minimal on-street parking in that stretch. And then when you move west of Ryder up Latoria, in front of 3554 Ryder, as well as 370 Latoria, you only see another 14 recess parking stalls on either side of the road. If you were to move onto the north onto Ryder, there are 10 recess parking stalls all the way down that don't start until you reach the first driveway of the high school. So a fairly limited amount of recess parking, on-street parking in that whole vicinity. As a resident of the area, and again, my neighbors would attest to this, that if you take a wander through there at 5 p.m. onwards or on weekends, you'll see that these parking spots are full at all times. It's a bit of a proverbial roll of the dice if you want to come visit somebody, or for some reason can't park in your own driveway or anything, you need to pull in there. And that's with the status quo. So our concern as residents isn't the nature of the development adjacent to us. That ship has sailed. We're not here to talk about a neighborhood house or any of these other issues. We know it's going to be there. Rental apartments are part of a vibrant community. We accept that some density is going to be necessary. But we have concerns about the long-term ability of people, residents and visitors alike, to park in that area. We already see that congestion now. My concern is that when we see sort of a mirror image in terms of higher density homes across from 370 Latoria, running up Latoria from the park all the way down, where will they park, right? Those on-street spots are already full. There's 14 now full every day. And then you're going to see, 123 plus units if this complete development goes ahead on that corner. And many of those folks will be commuting to town. I had this discussion with a member of council earlier that, I'm fortunate, folks, my age, I don't want to date myself, but, professionals later in careers, we can work from home. We can go down in a vehicle. We might be able to avoid the lengthy commute into town. But I would dare to suggest, and this is fairly anecdotal, but I believe it to be true, that the folks that are going to be in these rental apartments, for example, in the 123 plus units there, are probably going to need to commute to work for the foreseeable future, probably for a generation or so. I'd love for them all to get jobs at, the grocery store going in across the road, or at the museum, or in the seniors home. But, we've got to be realists and understand that isn't going to happen in the immediate future. So my concern right now, again, is that this is the highest density corner in Royal Bay. It's going to stay that way for some time. The only thing we can see happening in the near or short term to medium term future is just more development exacerbating an already critical issue. So for quality of life of the residents there, and for those who come to visit people there, we feel that this proposed reduction in parking is going to really create long-term concerns for this council and councils to follow. So we ask that you relook at it, and again, understand our perspective isn't about protecting our views. We don't have any. We accept, in the townhomes, that we're part of a vibrant urban kind of higher density community, and we're okay with that. So, what we're asking though is that you just consider accessibility, access for our visitors, access for the people that live there, drivability, all of those things that make a community, livable. So on behalf of everybody at 37 Latoria, that's all we ask is not for any amendments, any changes, just stay with the status quo and allow this development to unfold in a way that'll keep it livable for all of us. Thank you.
Ian, sorry.
Yeah.
Could you just say that? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? I'm just sorry. I'm stalling just in case people want to work up some nerve and come up there. And if you don't, I'm going to move on. So I'm just pausing for 30 more seconds. And it doesn't look like anybody else is going to come up. And Amanda, can I just ensure that nobody's on the call? Nobody's on the phone? Okay, great. Then we are going to move on. The next is 5, Mayor's message. The only message that I have this evening is clearly Thursday is Remembrance Day. Very much encourage all the public to take a moment and to reflect at 11 o'clock. There has been some questions about, is there an official event happening at the Colwood Cenotaph? I cannot say with certainty that there is. The Boy Scouts are talking about doing an event, but it's not public right now. So I'm afraid that I cannot encourage the public to come out to that. In addition as well, the public, as far as I know, the public is not encouraged, Royal Roads University is having a virtual Remembrance Day ceremony, and the ceremony that is happening at Veterans Park in Langford is, my understanding, is by invitation only right now. So I would really encourage people to possibly stay at home, find something on TV, find an opportunity to remember those who sacrificed so that we can be here today. Moving on to 6, adoption and receipt of minutes. 6.1, this is for the regular council meeting for October 25th, and a receipt for the Heritage Commission meeting minutes of May 13th, the Waterfront Coastal Process Committee meeting minutes for August 26th. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Is there any discussion, errors, omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. Those are adopted unanimously. Moving on to 7. Moving on to 7. 7.1, Arts and Culture Colwood Society presentation. Laura Davis.
Should be red for stop. I'd just like to acknowledge tonight with gratitude that we're on the Lekwungen people who allow us to live, work, and play on their lands. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Laura Davis, President of the Arts and Culture Colwood Society. I'm pleased to share tonight with you just a short update of the progress and our plans for next year. Oh, good. Wait, I have to remember how to work this thing. What? The batteries are likely. That's always what everyone says. The batteries are dead.
I'm not quite sure because we did it earlier and it worked.
Oh, gee.
I'll miss it maybe because it's on there.
Well, I can just cue you so we don't. Oh. Okay. And am I pushing the red? The right? I'll try all of them. Maybe the red's what caused the problem. So our mission, as you can see, our organization is not-for-profit society. We're located in Colwood, and our mission is to provide advocacy, collaboration, strengthen our partnerships, connect community with the arts, and deliver programming that aligns with our values. So we had a recent planning session, strategic planning, and we went over our values, and this is what we came up with: to create interest and engagement with our community, to share, teach, and support mental health, well-being, deliver our programs with integrity, respect, and inclusion, diversity. We strive to be successful, transparent, and accountable. Our programming is envisioned to include events that are beyond just the traditional visual arts. Our programs will showcase the arts in a way that provides community engagement and helps to enhance and sustain a healthy community here in Colwood. So the past year, we engaged in arts and culture in several different ways. The first project we supported in February, March was creation and installation of the Emily Carr Interpretive sign. So this is the gravel pit picture as you see in front of you, and I hope you've all had a chance to visit. For spring, summer, and fall, we did quite a few things. We had a spring art show at the end of May, which was coming right out of COVID. And we actually ended up with 280 people flowing through that day. For the summer, we provided musical theater by Four Seasons Musical Theater Company in 4 locations throughout Colwood. We saw the need, it was well received, and many asked, will there be more? In the fall, we had some funding left to host another art show, which we named Teach-A-Misit after consulting our new board member who's Indigenous. And she has relationships already with the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. So we decided it was time then to consider the beginnings of truth and reconciliation. So for Truth and Reconciliation, we had the fall art show, of course. And then this was on September 30th, we did the gathering, and we were supportive of that whole event. There were other players, of course. The city of Colwood was deeply involved in this event, and it was very well received, and a lot of connections were made that day. Looking forward to programming in the future, we'd like to engage, hopefully, in a mini festival in the summer, offering unique concerts, both indoor and outdoor, possibly jazz and classical. We hope to utilize the new Dogwood Auditorium, as well as outdoor space at Royal Roads and Fort Rudd Hill. We also plan to bring theater production back, much the same as we did last summer. For the visual arts, we are envisioning plein air painting in our various parks, as well as art shows for spring and fall. We are currently a major sponsor in the Coast Collective's Gifts and Wishes Holiday Showcase, which is the end of this month at the Pendray House here in Colwood. In our recent planning session, we also discussed the importance of supporting emerging artists in the community, both young and youth and young adults. We aren't sure how we want to deliver this, but we have it as an item we'd like to address. Also, the Coast Collective recently has favorably approved the opportunity to be a program within our Arts and Culture Society. This will be discussed more in detail in the early part of next year. For the First Nations initiatives, this is a very important program to our arts organization. Laura Yegajanis has joined our board and will be working on creating and delivering programming. This will be based on her connections with Songhees and Esquimalt nations to collaborate and identify needs and interests to support the Lekwungen peoples. Funding. This is just a sample of what we've already done. And mind you, this is only $5,800. But I wanted to give you a sense of the diversification of what we can do with that. The donations were almost the same as the city's funding, which was fabulous. And these actual dollars, it doesn't even consider the in-kind, which was at least double, maybe triple. So that just gives you a sense of what's missing there is provincial and federal. So that's our next goal. Much diversity is really needed for arts and culture. So in the coming year, we're hoping to leverage on top of, if we receive some municipal funding, the ability to apply for provincial funds such as gaming, British Columbia Arts Council project money, and Arts Fest, to name a few. So it's important to know that many of these revenue streams do rely on some local funding. They really want to see that. Federal sources will also be researched for arts and culture projects. Here's our team. I have a couple of the team here tonight. And we're fortunate because we have office management, not-for-profit governance, teaching, finance, artistic accreditation, lots of experience on the board. There's more details on the website if you wish to read that. So in closing, it is with passion that our team gathers. We gather to plan, create, and deliver arts and culture to our local community. We strive to make an impact that will engage and inspire expire. Hopefully it doesn't expire. Well, I was on a roll there. Will engage and inspire the citizens of Colwood. So thank you very much.
Thank
If you
you.
have any questions.
Yeah, thank
certainly
you,
able
thank
to.
you, Laura. First of all, let me say on behalf of all the council, we very much appreciate the work that the group has done. We've noticed it over the spring and summer and early
Okay.
fall. So I know I speak for all of us when we say thank you for that work that you've done.
Thank you.
I know there are a couple questions, so I will
Okay.
go to Councillor Kobayashi.
Thanks very much. Great job, Laura. I'm absolutely a supporter of the arts and culture, Colwood Arts and Culture. I guess the few questions I do have is, first of all, I just want to confirm you're 100% volunteer. Like, there's no
Yeah,
one
we
that's paid.
currently are. That's correct.
Okay. So second question I have is, I mean, I just love how you've leveraged the bit of money. Can you just confirm how much did you get in grant and aid from the city?
2,200.
Okay, so you've actually
And we have
leveraged that.
3,000 in the bank right now. So we did okay.
Excellent. Wow. No, that's pretty phenomenal. I think that's what that grant and aid should be for. And, you know, to see that you're actually going out and trying to raise your own money, kudos to you and the committee.
Yeah.
It just blows me away to see this, and it just makes me feel really good and to be part of this community. So great job on that. So I guess I don't have any other questions. I think you just jumped ahead and answered all my questions for me.
Okay.
So thank you very much
Thank
again.
you.
Like the mayor said, it's just fabulous what you do.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you again, Laura.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And we have a second exciting presentation as well. And this is for the Royal BC Museum Collections in Research Building. And I know that is online. So welcome.
Thank you.
And I will hand it off to you. So you have the attention of council.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the council for permitting us to give this presentation, giving us the time. My name is Daniel Musica. I'm the acting CEO of the Royal BC Museum. And we're here this evening to share with you what we are, who we are, and what our vision is for the Collections and Research Building in Colwood, and the progress that we've made to date on the project. I will begin by noting that we're speaking from the traditional unceded lands of the Kwangin people. We want to thank them for allowing us to live, work, and learn on their territory. I'm going to be joined this evening by Erica Stenson, who is the Acting Vice President of Museum Operations at the RBCM, and also by Kim Anderson, who's the Executive Project Director from Transport Infrastructure Corporation, who's managing the project. I would ask that the presentation be brought up. I don't know if you have it to be brought up.
I believe we do. So staff are just pulling it up as we speak. There we go. So we can no longer see you, but we can see the presentation.
Well, I think the main thing is to track on the presentation. So thank you very, very much. This gives us a little bit of an outline of what we'd like to achieve this evening, to share the Royal BC Museum's vision, explain what is the Collections and Research Building. The Collections and Research Building serves a specific purpose. If we go to the next slide, I'll ask you to click, there we go. We'd like to explain what a Collections and Research Building is, as opposed to the main exhibition site of the museum, explain our procurement process, and announce the shortlisted proponent teams that we have. I want to go back, there we go. I'd like to talk about the parties who are involved in the development of the Collections and Research Building of the Royal BC Museum. Obviously, the museum as a Crown Corporation itself, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, our ministry, which is the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture, and Sport, and Infrastructure BC, and the project manager, which is Transportation Investment Corporation. To the next slide, please. The Royal BC Museum strives, as noted here, to be a trusted source of knowledge about the people, lands, and events that are impacting British Columbia. We are very deeply committed to the repatriation of Indigenous belongings and ancestral remains, and in recognizing the broad context of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Please move to the next slide. We will be inviting the public to learn as participants in the collections and research building, and we're very focused on democratizing knowledge and creating a great deal of experience in the process of discovery. Our future is really focused on, as well, inclusion of Indigenous knowledge in not only human history, but in the natural sciences. Next slide, please. We are committed, and the collections and research building is the best exemplar of this, ensuring that the collections are safeguarded for generations to come, that we're housing them in a space that really permits us to conserve and secure the collections, and then a site that is seismically sound and environmentally sustainable as well. Again, the CRB, or the Collections and Research Building, is one of two sites for the Royal BC Museum as it moves forward. Is the main home of our collection. We will continue to have the exhibition site in the current location of the museum. We also, in developing the Collections and Research Building, want to increase people's access to our collection. If you come to the museum today, you get to see a couple of % of our collection. We'd like to create the opportunity for the public to at least see up to 50% of the collection that we have in a truly modernized facility. Next slide, please. The four narratives that really that guide us and truly underpin our decision-making process are Indigenous reconciliation. We are, as I noted, committed to repatriation of belongings and ancestral remains, and in the true incorporation of Indigenous knowledge in all that we do. We're focused on interacting with all of the communities that we serve, be they local, be they national, and to create a truly accessible institution that recognizes equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility in all its forms. We do want to build a sustainable world, and you can imagine that the collection that the RBCM has and the knowledge that our scientists incorporate really permit us to speak to how we can build a more sustainable world. And finally, we really do want to move toward opening the collections for learning and taking BC out to the world, but it's also very centrally about making the collection accessible, particularly by increasing the digitization of our collection so that it's more accessible in all communities. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Erica Stenson to talk about exactly what a collections and research building is. Erica?
Thank you, Dan. Could we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what is a collections and research building? Well, it is primarily to store the collections in a state-of-the-art, safe environment. And the collections include the BC archives, natural history collections, our humans or settler history, conservation, our research labs. We have spaces for learning and community outreach. And the Collections and Research Building will temporarily house the Indigenous Collections and Repatriation Program, which will eventually move back to our new site when we have some new spaces hopefully built for them in the future. Could we move to the next slide, please? The natural history collections include a number of different disciplines. We have a very large botany department. It's the largest and busiest herbarium in British Columbia. Includes vertebrates and invertebrates, so mammals, birds, and marine invertebrates. Ichthyology and herpetology, which includes what I like to call squishy things. So it's fish, and herpetology is reptiles and amphibians. Entomology, which is insects. Invertebrate zoology, mammalogy, ornithology, birds, and paleontology, so our fossil collection. BC has a rich fossil history, and in fact, we expect that we're going to be finding more BC dinosaurs in the future. Can we move to the next slide, please? When we think about our human history or modern history collections, it's about objects that tell the story of life in BC through material culture. So BC settler histories, including history of manufacturing, businesses, canneries, mining, breweries, professional activities and organizations on public health and medicine, policies, surveys, and groups. We have a lot of information in the archives about the histories of British Columbia. We have unique collections around BC ceramics and hotelware, documentation on the changing material culture of domestic life. So collections that include furniture. We have 10,000 plus textiles items ranging from quilts and lace and little samples of fabric. And we have other examples of types of dress through the centuries. The collections include looms, manufacturing materials like egg carton machines, cars, pianos, bicycles, and street signs. Could we have the next slide, please? The Collections and Research Building will have programming spaces. So as I said, the archives and collection storage will be approximately half the building and will be primarily secure, safe storage for those collections. We'll have conservation and research and learning labs, which will have access to the public in certain times. We'll have learning programs in there. We'll have open space research so people can come in and see what our researchers are working on through the windows and at times talk to them about their work. We'll have labs for digitization and photographic documentation, as Dan mentioned, to increase access to the collections. Of course, we'll have administration and security and building services. And the outdoors landscapes will have learning spaces that we can bring in people to talk about biodiversity and the impacts of cultural on land. And so there's a lot of opportunity to work with schools, to work with senior centers, to bring in digital field trips from around the province and show Collections and Research Building and interact with the Colwood community that way as well. May I have the next slide, please? Museum learning is based on a number of principles, and the mission for our program is we embrace the First Peoples principles of learning. And there are a number of principles there if you're not familiar with them, but it is about well-being, the well-being of self, of family, of community, and of land. It's about a holistic and relationship learning. It's about recognizing the consequences of our actions. So our actions might be on the land, around the people around us. It's intergenerational. So museum learning has a lot of programming around intergenerational activities where we might have elders and youth working together as they learn through the programs. We have the role of Indigenous knowledge in the learning programs. It involves patience and time, and it is embedded in history and story, which is what a museum should be. May I have the next slide, please? I am now going to hand it off to my friend Kim to talk about the program.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you again, Mayor and Council, for making time for us to come share where we're at with our project. So since the project was announced just a little over a year ago, we've been engaging throughout our team and with the Royal BC Museum with city staff to try and further our understanding of how we can integrate and fit within the broader community in Royal Bay. And we've kind of met with, I believe, all the departments from planning and engineering through development services to the fire department. So we've appreciated the time they've given us and the learning that's helped from our perspective to inform our program and our performance requirements for the building. So over this past year, we've been really working to finalize our program in what's going to be offered out at the Collections and Research Building and establish the many unique aspects of that project, which we believe actually both reflect the narratives of the museum and also actually align really well with a number of city objectives. So starting off with reflecting and integrating the Lekwungen culture. As Dan said, reconciliation is very important narrative for the museum moving forward. And we've engaged Indigenous liaison officers from both the Songhees and Esquimalt nations to work with us in setting our design requirements and also helping establish contractual obligations that we will have for our design build partner once they get into the construction of the facility. On the accessibility side, this really goes to putting community at the center and ensuring that this building is accessible to all. We're working with the provincial policies and initiatives to support the gender GBA plus, gender-based analysis plus. Thank you, Erica. We are also making it a requirement of our project that the design build partner achieves gold certification with Rick Hansen Foundation for Accessibility. Sustainability is at the forefront of everything that we're talking about for the project, for the building itself. We're moving forward with this being a mass timber building as a government-led initiative, but one that the Royal BC Museum wholly supports. In addition, we have requirements that it meet LEED Gold certification. We're setting an energy target to do everything we can to improve the performance of the building envelope and the systems that are installed within it. And we're also going as far as measuring what our embodied carbon footprint is going to be from the construction and directing the contractors to use non-potable water for our irrigation purposes throughout the site. So we've got some pretty stiff requirements there for our design build partner ultimately, and we're really excited about the facility that they're going to deliver for us in your community at the end of the day. Our procurement process officially began in June when we released our request for qualifications through BC Bid. So that was a publicly listed start of our procurement. And we're very excited to have received 6 responses to that request for qualifications when it closed in September. That high response rate really demonstrates how keen the interest in the market is to be involved in this fantastic project in your community. Next slide, please. So at the end of October, we did a public release of our shortlisted proponents. And each of the teams had to bring forward a general contractor who would be leading it. In 2 of the 3 examples, we have joint ventures, as well as asking them to nominate who their lead architectural firm and who their mass timber specialists were going to be. So our teams are a joint venture of Kinetic Construction with Smith Brothers Wilson and Wright Construction, with the architectural lead being Diamond Schmidt Architects, supported by Aspect Structural Engineers. The next team is a joint venture between Ledcor and Knappett Construction, supported with John McCaslin and Partners as the lead architect, and Fast & F Structural Engineers. And our third shortlisted team is Maple Reindeers Constructors with Michael Green Architecture and Equilibrium Consulting. All 3 of these teams are very highly qualified. They're industry leaders in mass timber buildings and all bring a variety of collections facilities and gallery design experience to the table. So we're really excited to see where they go with our request for proposals. Next, please. So the next step in our procurement, we have a time frame that'll take us approximately 8 months to go from the release of the RFP to when we reach contract award. Through that time, we will be going through a collaborative process where the owner's team meets numerous times with each of the proponent teams separately to help them pull together their schematic designs and their proposals that they'll be submitting to us in the spring. We will then have a 2-stage evaluation process where each team will be evaluated on their technical proposals, and then, if successful, invited to give us a financial bid. Our schedule right now is to target that contract being executed in June of 2022, following which we have estimated approximately a 2.5-year design and construction window for it that will get finalized once we select our partner to award the contract to. After that, we will have a process of quite a few months for the museum to move all of the collections and archives over from the downtown site out to Colwood, and look forward to opening in 2025. Next slide, please. Finally, I just wanted to really reiterate, we will continue to engage with city staff as we go through this procurement process and then as we embark on the design and construction phase itself. The the city involved in our initial kickoff meetings with the proponents coming up next week. So we've invited the city to come and talk about the permitting process and design and consultation. And we will also be having involvement through ourselves and Infrastructure BC on any inquiries that come forward from the proponent teams, and to help facilitate arranging meetings with city staff for any particular issues that any of the three proponent teams wish to discuss with the city, recognizing that that's where they'll be coming forward for their permit application. And that is the end of our slides. The next one, please, is just to turn it back to Mayor and open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate the presentation this evening. I think it was really helpful. We see all three of you standing back there.
Keeping it together.
I think it was great for the public to sort of start to understand what this building is going to be, and it's starting to feel very real when you start to say 2025. That's coming up quite quickly. So I am not seeing any hands. So you've done a fantastic job this evening. So we very much appreciate the presentation. So thank you very much for doing this today, and we look forward to future updates.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Good night now.
Thank you.
Moving on, that takes us to 8.1. This is from Kristen Morley, the corporate officer for the Capital Regional District. This is in regards to the municipal consent for bylaw number 4468, Capital Regional District Climate Action and Adaptive Services Establishment Bylaw 2008, Amendment number 2, 2021. Mr. Borhill, do you wish to make any comments before I look for a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff are prepared to answer any questions. We don't have a introduction or presentation associated with this item, but happy to answer any questions that come forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a couple of quick questions for you, Ian. First of all, it talks about community stakeholders. Who are community stakeholders? Can you just define who they are? When the phrase that they use is CRD staff will provide technical data and scientific expertise, disseminate information, and engage community stakeholders on climate-related issues. So I'm just trying to understand who's the community stakeholders. Is it like Scenic? Is Scenic a stakeholder? Is the city a stakeholder? Like what does that? Can you define what that means in that report?
Thank you for that question. And through His Worship, unfortunately, I don't have any additional information than what was put forward in this document. Happy to take any questions council have of the CRD and relate them to our counterparts there and report back to council. I see that we do have enough time in terms of the process to ask questions of the CRD and report back to council before.
Okay, that's great, because it just concerns me that it just seems like we have a lot of initiatives happening. We have city initiatives, scenic initiatives, CRD initiatives. I just don't want to be paying double for something for the same service. So I just want to understand that in my own head. The second question I have is there something, could you find this out also, of the $2.7 million that have already been, that they got in external funding, the CRD? Is there a report that tells us where they spent it? Like where, when, the where, when, what, why sort of thing? Because that's not very clear to me. So they want to collect some more taxes off taxpayers now, and there should be accountability to me, and I'd like to understand where it's being spent. So that's a critical question I have. And so the other thing too that I want to, I think I figured this out myself, like the actual report again, it was confusing to me because they talked about, per $1,000 of assessment, how much they were going to charge. But now I think I understand it now. It's 0.13 cents per thousand for up to $1.7 million or 0.0094 per thousand on the taxable value and improvements. So it's whatever is greater. They said it two different places, and I was going, wait a second here. I don't quite understand, but I figured it out myself. Is that correct, Jen? Do you know, Fan?
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, so we have clarified, and just to preface this information has not yet been incorporated into the draft budget, the CRD's draft budget for 2022 that was reviewed within the last 2 weeks. So this is new information. We are anticipating that should this bylaw go through, overall, the CRD would be requisitioning approximately $1.4 million in 2022, moving up to the no more than $1.7 million and change in 2023. Currently, the CRD is requisitioning just shy of $500,000 for this service, this regional service.
So don't get me wrong. I think that giving $7 out of my own pocket of tax dollars for this initiative is a great thing. I'll pay more. I pay a lot more. I just want to see it coordinated. Like, I just don't want to see the city of Colwood saying, okay, we're going to start up this thing and we want tax dollars, and the CRD is doing its thing. And that's the only thing that I just don't understand. There's nothing that puts it together, not unless Ian, you know something, there's different leadership on how this is going to be distributed, but that does concern me. And so my last question, and maybe the mayor knows this better because you sit on the CRD committee, I believe, on this, but it's are all 13 municipalities jumping on board on this then? Is that how it's going to work? Or because we're one area, we don't live in a biosphere in each of the municipalities. So did you know if we're all doing this together?
Yeah, so what has happened is that this passed at the board level. Because this is funding that needs to be requested through the municipalities, it's coming back to all 13 municipalities to confirm. Now I would have to be reminded on the voting, because I know it's a weighted vote because Victoria and Saanich have more votes than us on some issues. Some issues they don't, but I believe it's either 50% or 75% of the municipalities who participate need to approve this for it to pass. It's not a unanimous thing. In regards to some of the other questions, so Councillor Kobayashi, just so you know, and again, because I've been involved in this significantly, in the report itself, so for example, page 135, 136, 137, it gives us certain targets and things that we're hitting. And for example, using the example of, I was just looking at it on page 140, the Capital Regional EV Infrastructure Roadmap. That is basically designed to work in conjunction with the municipalities so that we begin to build out that EV roadmap of where the infrastructure is, and so that we actually begin to coordinate cross jurisdictions versus each jurisdiction doing it on its own. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, sorry, that put you. Sorry, Stuart's next, unfortunately.
Yeah, I did understand.
Okay.
All that, but it wasn't everything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I will go to Councillor Parkinson, then Baxter.
Thank you. And actually very similar questions to Councillor Kobayashi. I guess the one thing is this, if enough municipalities pass this bylaw, then is everybody in, or is it just the ones who pass it would be supporting it? That's the question. I don't know. Jen?
Through your worship, to answer your question, everybody would be in.
Okay.
And so this bylaw requires municipal consent from 2/3 of participants.
Okay. And then my only other concern, much like along the same lines as Councillor Kobayashi, is obviously in Colwood, we're trying to do some things for climate initiatives. And now CRD is doing some things for climate initiatives. And who's in charge of making sure that there's no overlap or underlap? Who sort of monitors not only what we're doing in-house, but making sure it's not, duplicating or conflicting with what's going on at CRD? Who's in charge there?
Through his worship, I can speak to the existing structure as it relates to communications between the municipalities and the CRD. So there's two working groups, both at the staff level and the political level, that the CRD manages in terms of connecting with member municipalities. So there's quarterly meetings that are held, and there's information sharing with respect to the coordination of activities. As has been mentioned, the CRD is providing this as a service to municipal partners. In that sense, they are supporting the work we are doing through their various initiatives. Right now, we are working through our low carbon resiliency planning exercise, hoping to get substantive start on that in Q1 next year. However, one of the input documents for that is our adaptation risk assessment that was conducted in partnership with the CRD. So that's one example of past work where we've worked together.
Yeah, I'd like to say that sort of made me feel all warm and fuzzy, but it just sounds like there's potential for, for instance, the CRD going to be subsidizing energy audits like we have as a city, or heat pump installations, electric heat pumps. Are they going to be, if they're just overseeing what we're doing already, what do we need them for? If they're doing their own programs, are they coordinated with ours? Are they the same or whatever? I mean, I guess I'd have more comfort if there was somebody on staff who is standing up and saying, I'm on top of this. I know who's doing what, and this is what we should be doing. That's my concern. I don't know if there's an answer to that or not.
Well, my understanding is it's you, Mr. Borehole, is it not?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. So our work to date with the CRD has been, I would argue, quite complementary. They're really right now working with a small team. There's two full-time positions at the CRD that are doing this work. So insofar as the strategy that's been adopted by the CRD would speak to a greater resourcing, I would agree with that sentiment that if that strategy is going to be implemented, they do need to increase the service level. Beyond that, I would have to report back through some communication with the CRD. I have not spoke to my counterparts there about this requisition, but happy to relate any information council requires me to do so.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's right.
Councillor Baxter.
I keep getting confused. Red means go.
Yeah,
green
red means go, and
speak. Yeah. So there's no question that our cooperation with CRD or their previous work that we've built on to do with sea level rise, for instance, has been an enormous help to the city, and that, for instance, the work they've done on their cycling trails is just quite frankly blown me away. But what I need before I could support this is what are they going to do that we couldn't do with some of those things like the trails and the sea level rise. Yeah, I think they did work that we couldn't afford to do. So that was great. But for instance, the EV roadmap, I have an app on my phone that tells me where every charging station is. I don't understand why anybody needs to map them when it's already been done. And they're going to increase EV adoption according to page 140. But there's a local group of EV drivers that have done incredible work to expand the purchase of EVs in the CRD region. And they funded it all themselves. So I'm looking for what will this money get us that we couldn't get on our own with that or less money.
well, I'm certainly not the person.
Okay, I guess everybody gets a turn in the hot seat on this one. And I do think that, it's a big process at the CRD when they are looking to increase a requisition, and perhaps it's completely in order to increase the requisition. But I think what we've received to date is not enough to answer the question, you know, is this good value for money for Colwood taxpayers? So I do think that we're all very aware of the risks of ignoring climate change, but I don't think we're all following the same roadmap. And I'd like to try to encourage us to all work together. There is a number of citizens in Colwood who are very interested in climate adaptation initiatives, and I don't see any opportunities being taken yet to engage with our citizens to determine where we're getting the best bang for our buck. I know of some initiatives that have made a great difference, including the regional flooding and inundation maps that the CRD has done. Those have been very useful. They've kind of stepped back from some of the municipal boundaries and, you know, presented a very factual take on, you know, where our problems are going to be in the future. I guess the next question that needs to be answered is, are we all working on the same thing? Are we all pulling in the same direction? And do we really need this much more money in order to accomplish the goals? And I currently couldn't tell you if that's true or not. I am very supportive of the steps that the CRD has taken to both improve their own carbon footprint for their own operations, but then Colwood has also taken significant steps to do that for our own operations as well. So I'm not quite sure yet where this fits. So I really do feel that this council, in order to support this initiative being expanded, which makes perfect sense given the situation the world is in, but we need to know that we're operating in the most effective way possible, and we don't know that right now because I really haven't had any presentations on their plan. They haven't met with any of our citizens groups. We don't have anyone coming forward from our community saying, rah, rah, this is a great idea, get behind it. So we need that engagement, and there's no sidestepping it as far as I can tell. I think we need to have more information to be sure that this is a good use of our money at this time. Maybe a better investment would be a different program. I can't say for sure because I've had zero presentation. So I would really like to hear why they think we should say yes and what are we getting out of it. Thank you.
So council, I've heard several of you talk this about wanting more information and looking at. I'm not sure if you go to page 124 all the way to page 133, it outlines exactly the action items that, you know, it states that's what goal 1 is. And goal 1 is to integrate and standardize the climate lens framework across my apologies, I don't have my glasses, so I'm having a hard time reading this, processes. And then 2, develop internal carbon pricing policies and procedures. 3, it goes on for 9 pages. And the idea of this is that what we're doing is we're coordinating this between the municipalities so that the municipalities are all working towards these action goals and providing the resources and support. I'm not sure if the CRD would show up here with any more information than what's in these reports to help this council make a decision. I mean, we certainly can ask them to come back and they can read the report to us. Councillor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I did read the report actually very carefully, line by line. And I'll tell you right now, it's very high level. I mean, it means diddly squat to me. It doesn't tell me, and I use that word because it's diddly squat. It's a lot of senior management mumbo jumbo. I used to do this, so I know how to do this. I know how to manipulate this. So the reality is it's not, there's no metrics associated with this. So I don't know if it's successful. We're getting a bang for our buck or are we not? And that's the hard part of it. I mean, a lot of this is developing this plan and this plan and this plan and this plan, and that's not reducing GHGs. So that's how I feel about it. And and if that's the intent of it, okay, fine, then I do understand this, because that's exactly what this document is. It's nothing, it's not to the level where I think that, well, you can turn around and say, yes, we are doing things to reduce GHGs. And so that's how I see this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you.
Sorry, just before you do, and actually, no, go ahead, Councillor.
Sorry, what I'm very aware of their programming and their language around their programming. What I'm not aware of and what isn't in this report is how does this fit with Colwood? Like, how do I mean, it's not my job to sell the CRD's program to Colwood citizens. It's the CRD's job to sell their program to my residents, who will then come to me and say, this is what we want to be a part of. So I'm not interested in trying to do their sales pitch for them. If they have a good reason for suggesting that we have a good interest in doing this, then I want them to do the communication and not wait for me to do it for them.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to make a motion that we defer this for further information.
Sorry, defer to when? Next council meeting? Is that what you're saying? Or
To whenever the CRD wants to come and enlighten us.
well, I don't want to leave it open-ended.
Well, I mean, I don't know what their schedule is, Your Worship, so.
Well, we can ask them to attend next council meeting.
Or
If
the
that-
one after, or,
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't matter, but in the near future, how about that, Mr.
Okay,
Borja?
sure, before the end of 2021, how's that? Yeah, okay. You comfortable with that, Councilor Kobayashi? All right, I will call the question then. Motion to defer. Just those in opposition? Nobody opposed. Thank you. Moving on to 9.1, Heritage Commission recommendation. This is a recommendation from the the October 27th Heritage Commission meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At their special meeting of October 27th, 2021, the Heritage Commission considered input from a subcommittee of 3 of its members who were charged with liaising with the Royal BC Museum on potential collaborations associated with the development of their new collections and research facility at Royal Bay. This resulted in the Heritage Commission drafting a letter to Mayor and Council attached to the staff briefing before you as Appendix A. This letter provides the stated rationale for the following recommendation from the Heritage Commission. That staff be directed to send a letter to the Royal BC Museum, RBCM, that includes the following requests. Firstly, that the RBCM identify the practices in archive design that support building a strong community through placemaking. Secondly, that the RBCM engage residents of Colwood to ensure there is a collaborative approach and understanding of the role and use of the collections and research building and environs. And lastly, that the RBCM report back to council on their support of these interests. Staff are seeking direction from council tonight on actioning the Heritage Commission's recommended letter, and I'm available to address any questions you may have about them. Thank you.
Councilor Jansen.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded. Discussion, Councilor Day.
Thank you. Actually, I was going to make the motion, so I am happy
Sorry.
with the wording presented.
Great, thank you. Councilor Baxter.
Yeah, I just, I'd like to say that I think these requests perhaps shouldn't be put in verbatim into any letter to RBCM, because asking RBCM to report to us, I think is a bit presumptuous, but asking them to provide us with their support would be much more polite.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely wordsmith that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Well, I was encouraged by the presentation by the museum tonight about their level of involvement with staff now and ongoing. And you know, I'm taking them at their word, and I assume that is the case, that there's a lot of interaction going on, which is probably where it should be. I wonder how we make this request part of the ongoing interplay between the museum and our staff, rather than saying, and here's one more thing we want. You know, they seem to be quite happy to work with our staff and listen to our staff. So I'm hoping that could be facilitated more with part of the ongoing, already existing dialogue. I don't dispute the thoughts behind this, and I want to support the Heritage Commission. I think they're doing good work. So that's all. Kind of along Councillor Baxter's lines of, you know, let's understand who's the big dog in the room here. We're not going to be telling them what to do too much. I guess we have some influence, but it would be more take up perhaps a little more different approach. And again, if it's these issues that we'd like addressed, but if they're happening with staff communication and meetings already, perhaps the mechanism exists. That might be a question for staff. If any, I don't know who's meeting with them. I assume Mr. Borhill's involved. Don't know.
Through His Worship, thank you for the question. Yes, so I'm in conversations with the project representatives on the museum side on a weekly basis. Primarily the conversation at the staff level are very technical insofar as we're supporting the development of this facility. The Heritage Commission came at it from a different angle. You know, we're very lucky to be served by a Heritage Commission that has a lot of depth in the area of archives and museum facilities. There's some perspectives there that staff don't have. So council originally asked the Heritage Commission to investigate the possibility of a West Shore oriented heritage interpretation space within the facility. It doesn't sound like that's in the cards right now. The programmatic plan for the facility doesn't allow for that type of dedicated interpretive space. However, there is a itinerant program that they're planning that very much would likely involve local heritage. So staff in the collections and research facility project team are continuing to have conversations. They have spoken to the potential of the museum supporting a city facility. So those are where the conversations currently lie, and we'll continue to involve the Heritage Commission and ask for their advice.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just, I do agree with Councillor Parkinson on this one for sure, because, you know, the one thing that they made very clear in the presentation was it's a BC-centric museum. It's taking BC out to the world, not just Colwood. So I'm being very guarded here, and the way, of course, the wording right now, as we said, we're going to wordsmith this right now. If we do send this letter, I just don't, you know, I just don't want to make them angry, because it's certainly that way. And if we could do this through, you know, through staff, because, you know, the cooperation looks like you're working directly with these folks, and maybe these type of questions can be put through staff to the BC Museum. It's just another alternative without sending out another letter, which may threaten them or not threaten them. I'm not using the right words here, but I'm just very guarded about this right now, because I could see myself, if I'm the CEO of this big museum, that's a BC centric museum, and this little tiny municipality is telling me, you know, this is how I'm going to drive my boat. I think that would kind of upset me a little bit. And so anyways, just my comments.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just, you know, when I guess I didn't see the perception that I'm hearing around the table of a conflict here. I saw the words in their presentation about making this a center of our community as well as their cherished project. And I don't really understand how that happens without being lost in this big BC centered place. So I'm just looking for an explanation for what the words that they put in their own presentation here tonight that would give me some understanding of what does that look like. You know, if we have a community center with the BC Museum that creates opportunities within our community, what does that look like? So I'm just looking for some clarification on what I saw in their presentation to us tonight in terms of, I realize they may not even know exactly what that looks like yet. There's a lot of wonderful things in their presentation. I'm excited for the Royal BC Museum. Probably 15 years ago, I talked to people who worked at the Royal BC Museum and their fond aspirations to having a greater space to keep their collections in because so little of it was available to be viewed by the public. It's amazing that it's coming true and that it's coming true here in Colwood. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, but when you tell me that you're going to be a part of our community and that our community is going to be a part of you, I'd like to know what that looks like. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm not hearing any other comments, so I'm going to call the question. Council, does everybody comfortable with the motion? Okay. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes, so that motion passes. Moving on to 9.2, this is Ms. Hempting, our Director of Finance and Acting CAO, regarding our 2022 budget approach. Ms. Hempting.
Thank you, Your Worship. You have before you tonight a staff report that outlines the budget approach we will be taking to both this year's service review and following budget deliberations. I'd take a moment to just highlight a few key factors of this report. It's important to note that we are taking an approach that is consistent with that we took last year. So we will start with a 2021 service review. It will be Council's opportunity to endorse the service levels provided or provide direction to staff if we wish to see changes to those service levels. Administration staff, we will provide budget estimates for each of the city's service levels. Appendix 1 to this report outlines the timeline that we are proposing we follow for this. Specifically, later this month, we will get into service review. And then into January, we will start budget deliberations based on the direction that we heard during that review. I've also highlighted in this report a couple of service considerations noted in this report that really will be highlighted in depth as we get into service review. So noticeably, with respect to our policing services, discussions surrounding the e-com transition and when municipalities can expect to become responsible for the funding of the e-com service, as well as discussions surrounding changes to policing strength. I've also highlighted the fire department's paid on call transition, and that will be discussed in depth during service review later this month. I am looking for council to endorse this approach or provide direction otherwise tonight. And we will next be before you November 23rd to start the 2021 service review. Be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Hempting. So just for those people who are watching online, the Appendix A, the service review dates are, service review will be happening Tuesday, November 23rd, Monday, November 29th, Tuesday, November 30th, and Tuesday, December 7th, all at 6 p.m. There'll be a grants and aid. So if you've made a request for a grant, that will be happening on Monday, May 13th. And then budget deliberations will be happening Tuesday, January 25th, Wednesday, January 26th, Monday, February 7th, Tuesday, February 8th, all at 6 p.m. With the financial plan happening on Monday, March 14th and the 28th, with the hopefully April tax rates being passed. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I just want to thank Jen Hempting for a brilliantly clear and concise report. I do love the clarity of it. Quite sure I never achieved it when I was department head, but thank you for that, and I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder to that? I saw Councillor Parkinson first. Thank you. Going next to, sorry, can you turn that off for me? Going next to Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a couple quick questions, Jen. I wasn't here, of course. I was running in a federal election, I think, at the time when you had this initial meeting. Just a couple, one that's actually a comment that I picked up as a trustee at the Greater Victoria Public Library. I noticed that they used the latest CRD census for the population of Colwood. And we're just north of 19,000 people now, according to their numbers. And that's the number they used in the calculation of how much we pay. So we are now the 4th largest by population municipality in the 13 municipalities in Greater Victoria. I'm just wondering if you have, you're going to be accounting for that in the packages too, because all those formulas for everything that we share with the CRD is going to be based on that same formula. So that's question number one. And the second one is maybe you had this discussion at that initial budget meeting. And one of my biggest issues last year when we talked about service review. Okay, let's just say we spent, just fictitiously, we used to spend $1 million on park maintenance. And then last year we decided we're gonna improve service levels. So we spent $1.3 million. And so how do we know we're improving? Like, what's that metric? Do we have an actual metric? Because when we're talking service levels, I just don't want to go into these budget discussions again. And we say, well, we want to spend more money, but like, what's the output? Like, it doesn't seem like there's that. Is it better than it was before? And they always promised when I initially joined council, I remember the director of engineering at that time promised council that she would have these metrics for us. And they never, ever appeared. So why was I being such a jackass when it came to budget increases? Because those weren't delivered. So how could I approve something that wasn't delivered? So then we jacked up the taxes, and you wonder why I kept on voting it down. Well, we weren't doing what we said we were going to do. So did you have these discussions already? So is there a way that we're going to be able to measure these now so that you can come back and say, oh, by the way, that 20% increase we give you for public works for parks, it gave us 20% better or 30% better. Is there a metric for that now? Is that how we're going into this? Thank you.
Through your worship, thank you for those questions. I'll provide a few comments. It's certainly important that we always provide context with respect to what is driving any of the requisitions that the city must consider on an annual basis. Some are requisition based on assessment values, some on population statistics, some on a combination of both. And I appreciate the need to highlight that information when we get within each of the respective service areas. Also important to highlight and comment on what direction was given and received and actioned under last year's service review. As you know, last year was the first formal service review, and council did endorse increased service in a number of areas. Staff are well aware of the need to highlight and report back on where we are at with actioning that increased service. And we absolutely recognize how helpful it is to provide added context in the way of metrics or key performance indicators. So we will be bringing forth what we have available that will be published with part of these service profiles that are published in anticipation of the first Finance and Governance meeting on November 23rd. If there is anything council wishes to see that we don't have published at that time, certainly we would look for that direction during service review. It may be something that we have just started to track, or upon receiving that direction, moving forward, we can start to track that information so that it can provide that greater context for understanding just how we are increasing service delivery. Thank you. I hope that answered your questions. Sorry, would you repeat the first question? Yes, absolutely. So we will provide that information. And then we can also add that context to the financial implications of each service area.
You turned me off again, didn't you? This is awesome. Thanks, Jen. It's a great roadmap. So have we had written confirmation to the effect about the communication center then? Is that a done deal? The last correspondence I saw said it was still under discussion. There was something we were waiting for a letter.
Absolutely, through your worship. This is not a done deal. We have not yet received final cost estimates nor final confirmation on when we can anticipate this change to take effect. I'm hopeful that I will have updated information. We are looking to discuss policing on November 23rd, and I hope to have further information at that time. To date, I have the initial estimates that were provided to us earlier this spring of 2021.
Awesome. Thank you. And so that's a bit of a question mark then still as well. But regardless, it looks like 2024 is the drop dead date, which means we're potentially moving money around in anticipation of that for the future. So it is going to impact this year's budget, in my mind, in layperson terms.
Through your worship, yes, we will be presenting a draft budget that will show a financial implication in 2022 as we prepare for this transition.
Thank you. So there is in your agenda, there is a recommendation that council endorse the 2022 budget approach, including the timelines for both the 2021 service review and the 2022 budget deliberations. May I get a mover and seconder, please?
I think I actually already.
Oh, have you moved that? Yeah. Do I already have? Thank you. I didn't. It was so long ago, I forgot. My apologies. Or I'm just getting old, one of the two. Then I will call the question since I already have a motion on the table. Those in opposition? Good. Thank you. Nobody opposed. Moving on to 9.3, Mr. Borhill, our Director of Community Planning, regarding our 2022 active transportation priority projects.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report before you seeks council's approval to award the contract for engineering services for detailed design of 7 active transportation projects, including 6 new sections of sidewalk and 1 bikeway corridor. Staff were directed by council to initiate these and 3 other sidewalk and bike lane projects along Machosen Road, such that all 10 projects could be constructed within the years 2022 and 2023. Staff intend on proceeding with a separate RFP for the detailed design of the remaining Machosen Road active transportation priority projects. The city's purchasing policy requires council approval for purchases over $250,000. Therefore, a resolution from council is required to proceed. Based on the results of a request for proposals posted on BC Bid in September of this year, staff recommend that the contract for engineering services to provide detailed design, cost estimation, tender support, contract administration, and inspections for the 7 listed active transportation priority projects be awarded to McElhaney Limited in the amount of $342,085. And furthermore, that Marin the mayor and the corporate officer be authorized to sign all contractual documents. Of the two received proposals, McElhaney's submission was scored highest by Interdepartmental Evaluation Committee. This process applied criteria pertaining to qualifications and experience, proposed methodology, completeness of proposal, schedule, and proposed fees. If council proceeds with authorization to award tonight, it is anticipated that detailed design will be finalized by June 2022, and construction will be complete in the first quarter of 2023. Myself, the Director of Engineering and Development Services, as well as Dan Casey, Transportation Engineer with Urban Systems, who is engaged to assist staff in the RFP process, are available for any questions from council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, Councillor Baxter was on queue, so I'm going to go him with the seconder. No other comments. Okay, Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I just have one question. It may seem like a detail asked early in the process, but I have, I want to ask this before we're too far down the road. The Lagoon Road walkway, for instance, that's a long straight road. And in a place that both you and I worked, it was the rule that you didn't build long straight sidewalks. You change the offset from the road every so often because it makes the walk a lot more interesting. Will we be using that approach wherever possible?
Through the chair, to Councillor Baxter's question, thank you. I certainly, as a professional planner looking to add interest to the lives of the residents of Colwood, I would certainly agree that that is a feature that I would look for in sidewalks. However, I'd have to defer to my colleagues in engineering and the team that will be carrying out this project in terms of its implementation. There may be some technical restraints on certain sections of road that make that type of meandering design not feasible, but happy to take direction from council on facets of the project such as that.
I see Mr. Molnar.
Yeah, I see Mr. Molnar has his hand up. So Mr. Molnar.
Thank you very much. Please excuse that my video is not on. I can't get my screen to blur appropriately. Yes, I completely agree. It adds a lot of interest. Where feasible and possible, we will certainly be adding meandering. Our attempt is to create as much versatility as possible for future potential expansion. So we're relocating or building sidewalks as close to property line as possible. But yes, we are tending to meander around trees, significant outcroppings, and to create interest as many places as possible. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to the many residents who have been waiting for many years for some of these projects to wind their way forward. And I won't mention them by name, but there are a number of advocates within our community who have particularly been vigilant and observant and persistent and patient. And finally, although it looks like a lot, this is a relatively small amount of improvements, and I hope that we can get our plans sufficiently clear to do more in the future. But I just wanted to recognize that many residents of Colwood have been providing input, some of them for more than 15 years on some of these areas and their need for improvement, and hopefully they will be happy with the results.
Thank you. It certainly is nice that after 15 years, we're able to actually move some of these things forward. So I think that's something that we can embrace as a council. I don't see any of their hands, so I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition to the motion? Nobody opposes, so that motion passes. Moving on to 9.4. This is Ms. Perkins, our Manager of Human Resources, regarding an update on the safe operations to support workplace communicable disease prevention. Ms. Perkins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have been provided a briefing note with a copy of the city's administrative policy, which has been updated. The policy name, Safe Operations to Support Workplace Communicable Disease Prevention. And it has been updated to include a temporary section addressing vaccination requirements for COVID-19. That temporary section is in effect from January 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022, and may be updated again depending on the evolving pandemic situation if required.
Great, thank you. I will look to council for any questions. This is just a report to receive, so I'm actually not going to look for a motion because we've just received it. But I will, Councillor Jansen, questions?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've read through the policy. I wholeheartedly endorse what we're trying to achieve as a community, as a workplace. And the only thought I had was that I do notice that we've included a subsection that pertains to religious exemption, which the policies I'm more familiar with in my workplace and a couple others don't offer that exemption. I just wonder if there's some rationale or if there's any explanation that might go along with that. It seems to be a bit of a departure from some others. Thank you.
Ms. Perkins?
That particular exemption was noted following consultation with our legal counsel. So we were following that advice. It does recognize an aspect of the Human Rights Code that the city wants to, administration wants to be inclusive of.
Great. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm just curious, it does say in the briefing note that the vaccination requirement will cease to be in effect on June 30th of 2022. And I'm just wondering why that's built in obsolescence while I think we're all aware that the world has kind of changed and probably COVID vaccinations are going to be with us from this point forward. Is that fluid or is that a hard stop that in 2022 it'll be removed?
The intention is that we would extend it if required at that time. It is based on legal recommendation again that that requirement be temporary. The BC Office of Human Rights Commission has also provided guidance that such policies should be temporary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I too am a bit concerned about the religious exemption as it's not consistent with the recent PHO order that came down to my employer that is requiring everyone to be vaccinated. Religious exemptions are zero, and in fact, they're not being entertained, period. And limited health medical exemptions are being entertained. And I think there's only a literal handful of medical exemptions that have been approved so far for my employer. My question is more on the implications of on our staffing levels. So I'm curious, Candace, what impact to our staffing levels will this policy have? And seeing that this is only until June 30th, what are the logistics in terms of ensuring that our service levels are maintained? Because I recognize if staff are put off for say 6 months or 6 months of unpaid leave, how are we going to backfill them? Obviously, they're temporary, and I just worry about the attraction of staff to temporary short-term positions and being able to maintain the level of service. the residents have come to enjoy.
Well, I don't anticipate that we will have a significant impact to our staffing service levels. We will be making every attempt to accommodate employees as needed, and accommodation can take many forms. If we're unable to accommodate an employee in their own position, there may be ways to accommodate them aligned to their skills and abilities to alternate work that still provides value and service to the city.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up, and as I said, I'm not going to look for a motion because this was just for information purposes. I will say this though, the one thing that I would just like to put on notice, and I do not wish for this to be a discussion item this evening, Council, but I would like to let you know that I'm thinking about it. This briefing that we just received is in regards to staff. We are not considered staff. So council is exempt from this, and that council does not need to be vaccinated at the present time. I have been looking into, can an elected official be mandated to be vaccinated? I do not know the answer to that. I don't believe they can. However, I did have staff say to me earlier today that the city of Richmond has put a policy in place requiring that their council is vaccinated as well as with staff. So I'm just letting people know that I will be bringing this back as more work is done, and I actually have some information to share with you. It's a little different when it's an elected official because clearly somebody could run on a platform of not being vaccinated and then get elected, and then we're in a position of saying, no, you can't be in the building. So I'm not sure how that would work. So just so you know that I'm working on it. So we'll figure that out as we move forward. That is it for 9.4, unless anyone else has any other comments. Seeing none, I will move then into bylaws. Bylaw number 10.1. This is bylaw number 1892, land use bylaw amendment CD 28 zone area 5, Latoria South. This is for adoption. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Is there discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 10.2, bylaw number 1908, land use bylaw amendment 3554, Ryder Heshdall Way. This is for first and second reading. So moved. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I will second for discussion. So now that gets us to discussion. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, challenging site. Well, maybe not that challenging. I support the concept of rental on that site. I think it's a good use. I noticed that the proponent has certainly reduced the buildings and heights from the initial consideration that he was looking for. I think it's a good place for rental. And frankly, what they're building there now occupies about half the site. And if we don't finish what we're doing or what they're doing on that site, it's going to come back to future councils with other chances and whatever. So it probably maybe is our responsibility to step up and deal with this site. But I do agree this site is unique, and it to my mind, it's uniquely challenged in its parking. We've heard from the neighbors about the lack of sort of, call it surplus parking. If there's a peak in parking beyond whatever is provided on this site, it really doesn't have anywhere handy to go. I was out there, I've looked at it a number of times since we started talking about this site. Out there as recently as Sunday morning. There were a couple of spaces on Latoria Boulevard, sort of, within sight of this, or I guess, yeah, Latoria Boulevard, within sight of this project. There weren't any on Ryder Heshdall Way. So in my mind, we really have to make sure that the parking on this site adequately handles some high percentage of the occasions, 95% of the time or something. It's not something where you can say on average it's going to be okay, because of course on average would mean 50% of the time it wasn't okay. So I do think that it requires more parking than perhaps other areas do. And I know we've discussed parking in all sorts of ways, shapes and forms since I've been on council. I sort of tried to look at the numbers. You know, the initial phase one, if we do nothing and they continue to build phase one, they're looking at 142 parking stalls. That's almost 2 for every of the 72 units. As discussed last time, that does to me seem excessive for a rental project, and I think the studies that we've seen would support that's a little high. So I can see backing off the 2 number. The 1.3 that's within this, to me, that comes up to, you know, 94 for the existing, for the 72 in construction, and 74 for the 57 proposed. Frankly, I'm not there. I'm not there. And I guess, you know, just to cut to the chase, when I bounce back and forth, look all over, try to come up with something that to my gut and based on my, you know, what I'm hearing from the traffic people and our staff, I think the number should be 1.6 stalls per unit. And I know that's a large step, and I know it's not what the developer is proposing. So I won't make a motion to amend this. I think the appropriate thing to do is, if council agrees with me, and frankly that's to be seen, wouldn't be the first time they don't agree with me. But if council is of that wish, I think probably the proper thing is to bounce it back to staff and the developer to wrestle with that, to see whether you know, I don't think we should unilaterally say there it is, take it my way or the highway, although I think I'm fairly firm in what I believe. So that's where I'm coming from on this site. I agree it needs more than the minimum parking, and I know what the existing bylaw says. To me, it doesn't sort of sound appropriate. So that's why I'm coming up, I guess, essentially in the middle. So those are my thoughts. As I said, I think if there's support for the 1.6 number, I think, and we can, you know, bounce it back to staff or somebody to see if they agree. But I think that it's probably, rather than change it and pass it, it's probably more appropriate to send it back to see what the proponents want to do, if that's our feeling. So I'll wait to hear what the rest of council has to say here. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Now we're talking, Councillor Parkinson. Now we're talking. I've never, ever changed my position on this. And as you know, I fought it in committee of the whole and at council. This is a compromise, and it's a welcome compromise. 1.65 actually would be a good number, because that's halfway. So I am willing to support that, because it would just mean a couple from losses of just a few spots from the original bylaw that we had there before. So I'm much happier, because like I said, it does have a special, it is a special situation, and I didn't articulate that very well. I thought I did. And so I'm willing to compromise on that number. 1.65, did you say? Because, you know, as Councillor Day has said to me one time, you know, earlier in the meeting, it sort of struck home with me. She says, you know, you can always monetize parking lots later, you know, but once you take them away, they're gone. I mean, we're stuck with it. And I'm still concerned about, you know, the eventual 4-laner down Latoria Boulevard, and we'll lose all those skeleton parking spaces. So, and it's just going to make a mess. And then I sort of put myself in the shoes of people that live there. It's simple. When you put your feet in their shoes, you know, how would you feel? And I'd say absolutely not. So anyways, I'm willing to compromise. So that's a good number. 1.65. Isn't that what you said, Mr. Parkinson?
I move that the bylaw be amended in 10.36.61A to replace 1.3 spaces with 1.6 spaces.
Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Kobayashi has seconded that. Discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not with Councillor Parkinson. I think there's no need to bounce this back. I'm sure if anybody in the process doesn't like what we're doing, I'm sure we'll hear about it. But I'm not sure that would change what we're going to do. So I think to keep this process moving, we amend the bylaw, we pass the first readings of the bylaw, and we move on.
Thank you. So I definitely, I haven't changed my position. I don't support having less parking. I've talked to a number of businesses in local communities who are, have throughout the COVID restrictions, have found that parking spaces that might have assisted them with operating their business differently are not available in places where parking has been set up to be less. And while I recognize that we don't want to have vast acres of parking spots, we also have an opportunity to think differently about our communities and provide the spaces, or if there are, if they build the apartment building and they find that, they consistently have 10 vacant spots every day, I'm sure that they could find ways to as Councillor Kobayashi noted, I had said, to monetize those. It's happening downtown all the time. People are renting out their parking spaces to people who would like to be able to use them. Or there's other endeavors that are going on, such as different styles of merchandising where people are pulling in to use that parking space to pick up their goods, or they're being used by a local cafe, or they're being used for other short-term uses. There's many different ways to utilize parking spaces, but if you don't have them, you can't create them. Thanks.
Just a quick question. What was the ratio before? It was 1.7, wasn't it? Can you, just wondering if, Brent, if you're still on the phone call, if you could just confirm what that number was before? I think it was 1.7.
Thanks, Councillor Kobayashi. Just let me find out and I will raise my hand when I've got that number. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Seems that this project is one that has garnered a lot of attention.
Looks like Dennis, we can hear you actually. Dennis, you want to turn off your mic?
I think it was actually Brent.
Or maybe it was Brent. Oh wait, sorry, Dennis, you got your hand up now. Did you want to talk before Councillor Jansen? Go ahead.
Your Worship, I was going to answer Councillor Kobayashi's question.
Sure, go ahead.
So the parking standard that was previously applied for was essentially the CD 28 zone standard, which translates into about 1.14 per dwelling, as opposed to the 1.3 that was in the bylaw before you tonight.
What I meant was the original zoning. When they had to do the original 94 parking spots for phase 1. What was that? What was the ratio on that again? 1.7?
That would have been just about 1.6. That's essentially, the phase 1 was built, Your Worship, the phase 1 was built under the current bylaw, and it translates to about 1.6 per dwelling.
Okay, then I'm happy, because that was the original, which I always wanted. Thank you.
Councillor Jansen.
I thank Your Worship. This has been batted around quite a bit, and quite frankly, I start to zone out a little bit when we get down to the the decimals because bring up 1.4 FAR, 8.5 FAR, you know, it's beyond my general arts degree, is like I say to Councillor Parkinson. But bottom line is, I believe there's probably some pressures here. How do we manage those pressures? And I mean, I think some of this doom and gloom discussion has come up at other developments within our community, as Councillor Logan has pointed out, that haven't come to pass. However, we do need to be sensitive to the surrounding neighborhoods. And I don't even know what the right answer is. And quite frankly, I'm not sure at this point how I feel about this. But the one thought I did have when I did do some investigation with our neighboring municipality, and I spoke to council members from Langford, they told me that they have a much better success rate with buildings that are managed with on-site managers. And I'm just wondering, and I just point this out to staff, that I would love to hear some feedback about what is proposed for this site. If it's long-term rentals, is there going to be an on-site manager, or is it some 1-800 number that we're going to call and gets picked up in Toronto, which obviously isn't going to help the situation whatsoever. So I send that out to Dennis, and hopefully by 3rd and 4th, we can maybe hear something back on what the intention is. As far as what's proposed, 1.3 spots, you know, when I look at that and I try to compare that to the configuration of units in the building, it doesn't really compute to me, and I don't understand like how that fits in with a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom suite. How does 1.3 spots equate? And are the spots going to be rented separately from the units, or will the spot go with the unit? Or if someone needs 3 spots for their unit, will they have access to it? I mean, these kinds of questions are, you know, fairly specific, but I think have an impact on the overall configuration. So those are some of my thoughts. I'm still a fence dweller on this, but I'll await some of the further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
I hear Councillor Jansen struggling with this issue because of his general arts degree. That's why I thought you'd like to have somebody with an engineering degree actually propose the amendment, and then all he has to do is stick up his hand and agree with it. And I completely agree with Councillor Logan that there are some notable examples of doom and gloom about apartment buildings being built that turned out to be absolutely not so. One or two, I should say, in my own neighborhood, where they seem to have blended in quite well, and some in Councillor Logan's neighborhood. But that doesn't mean to say that it works in every single case. And in this case, I think we've got a good building in the right place, but I think we just need to be careful about the parking. So I would ask at least 4 of you, or 3 of you and 1 of me, to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
That's a hard one to follow, and I appreciate the dig to Councillor Jansen. I couldn't have put it any better myself. But I will just say, a lot of the comments that we've received from the community are quite common, and they're valid, but they're also made with a lot of assumptions. We heard early on when the project was presented that there is some stigma towards renters, which I found offensive. I think we were all renters at one time. And again, there's an assumption that renters were less than ideal community members. And that was pointed out to be a concern with this project. And there's an assumption that, renters have a multitude of vehicles. May not always be the case. And I also want to say that, I appreciate there was some compromise and some back and forth between staff and the proponent, and the number was adjusted a bit higher. You know, and I say that, you know, the more parking we propose, the more traffic, the more encouragement to have more vehicles, which equals more traffic on our roads. But also, for me, it is counter to really what our goals say as a city, and which is to reduce vehicle trips and to encourage people to actually reduce the amount of vehicles that they have. And we're trying to build a community that is walkable, so you don't need 2 vehicles. You know, so it's clear that we are thinking in terms of 2021. I'm a 50-year-old, yes, believe it or not, and I'm you know, I have certain mindsets, but I think of my kids who have different mindsets and are perhaps a little more in tune with their feet than I am. And I think that's who we need to think about, not us gray-haired old folks who sit at this table. I'm just talking to myself, and think about the you know, our grandchildren or our kids who we are trying to encourage to use alternate modes of transportation. And here, sometimes we need to make that tough decision to put a little bit of pressure in order to change behavior. And as long as we keep making it convenient for people, that behavior is not going to change, in my opinion. And so you know, I've done the calculations to see what the difference in parking is between 1.3 and 1.6, but I just recognize the work that was done by staff, and I recognize that the parking reductions haven't had a major impact in other areas, and I will say that you know, some of the parking woes in that area are self-inflicted as well, and because they're not parking within their garages, or they've created illegal suites, and I think we need to address that as well. If parking is a concern in that neighborhood, then sometimes the neighborhood needs to do a little reflection. And so I won't, with all due respect to my friends, I won't be supporting the amendment. I think 1.3 was appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go next because I haven't spoken yet, and then I'll go to Councillor Day and then Baxter. I'm not going to be supporting the 1.6 either, but I want to explain this. I want this to be successful. I want this neighborhood to be successful. There are values, though, that we also aspire to. And we aspire, we've declared that there's a climate emergency. And so I need to have that as part of my lens. Councillor Kobayashi has talked about, when he was on the federal, one of the biggest things that we talked about was creating affordability within this region. How do we create affordability? An additional 25 parking spots will range somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 each. If it's at $50,000, that's $1.2 million of additional costs that are ending up onto the renter. It's not landing on the developer, it's landing on the renter. So we're not creating affordability if we continue to create these costs. In addition, as I said, I want this neighborhood to be successful. There is a high school right beside it that has over 150 parking spots that do not get used. They just sit there. And trust me, I get emails on not on a fairly regular basis, but I've received significant amount of emails from residents who live on Ryder Hesha Way who feel frustrated that we're not closing the gate because there are kids doing donuts in that parking lot at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so if we had cars actually parked in there, that would be part of it. So I'm not saying that that's the answer, but what I'm suggesting is that there are areas that the parking can go as well. If we built Latoria North properly, there shouldn't be any cars on the roads right now. People should be parking in their driveways and in their garages. Why are they not? It's an interesting question. So I have trust in my staff. The staff have made the recommendation of 1.3. I have to trust that staff believe that this will allow this community to be successful with that parking. If not, then we should probably be looking at new staff as well, I guess. So I will now go to Councillor Day.
Am I up? All right, good. Couple of points just to bring forward. I don't have any stigma towards renters. I've been trying to get more rental properties in Colwood since 2002. I do have a concern, however, that when we have big companies coming from out of town and building rental buildings in Colwood, that they may in fact have a monopoly on those opportunities, and we may find that they don't always put the community first. There are significant concerns with the management of a number of rental apartment buildings in neighboring municipalities. I know because I know people who live in them who are continuing to have considerable difficulties. We just had the SWAT team in one of them the other day. So they do come with everything that any other publicly owned rented facility would have, which is that you have very little control over some of the things that may happen in the future there. That said, it's still worth having rental buildings. I just feel that we need to be very aware that our community has asked us. They have stepped up to the plate. They have been involved. They have come out. They have detailed what the issues are that they feel are a concern, and they're asking us to hear them. A number of people around this table are hearing that and are saying, this is what we're hearing. We've gone out, we've verified, yes, those parking spots are full. No, there isn't somebody else there. It's been going on for years. There's another road not very far down Latoria Road where very little parking was built for the homes that were built there. And they're parking in what would be the bicycle lane on Latoria Road right now. 3 cars every day of the week that I drive by, they're parked there every single day. It happens. It is happening. If we don't have enough parking, then we're going to be going to our bylaw officers, and every single person who lives in Colwood is going to be paying to enforce our bylaws to make sure that people aren't parking where they shouldn't be parking. So either we have enough parking to meet the demand, and the people who build that place that has that demand pay for those parking spaces, or we don't have enough parking spaces, and then everybody in Colwood ends up on the hook for paying the costs to enforce that parking bylaw in the future. So I know it's not a perfect world and we can't equal out everything, but we need to provide enough space in our community for the basics. I have more than 1 car. I only drive them one at a time. And most of the time I try to leave mine at home and walk if I can. So I still need a place to park that car because sometimes I still need to use that car. That's the reality. It doesn't mean that every car will be on the road all the time just because it has a parking spot. So I think we need to listen to the people who are coming in good faith to tell us what the issues are in our community and try to address them as best we can. If that means 1.6 in this case, that means 1.6. Thanks.
Your worship, I know where you're coming from, and I'm not going to try and argue with you, but I just want to use one thing you said to illustrate my point. You said, why aren't these people parking in their driveways? And I believe I'm absolutely right in saying all of those houses along Ryder Hesdall do not have driveways. And I think that is the problem. In single family subdivisions, you're required to provide 2 parking spaces per household, and your 2 garage spots fulfill that need. But that's not what people usually use. They use the driveway apron which they can legally expand to hold as many cars as will fit in the width of their lot. They can't expand the width of the driveway as it comes off the road, but they can expand the width on their lot. And therefore, even though they fill their their garages with rusty snow blowers and other equipment, they have their driveway apron to park on, unless they're on Ryder Hesdall Way and some of the other streets in that neighborhood. So that's the source of the problem, I believe. But I do have to complain about Councillor Logan claiming a free pass because he's 50 years old. I'm 70. I sold my car and I only ride my bike, and I love it. And you would too.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. So one of the things that I think I've enjoyed while being on council, and I've been stretched by, is I realize that we don't get simple issues to deal with, and it's not just, you know, today we're about affordable housing, so therefore we do everything based on that, and tomorrow we're about parking or climate change, whatever. So then we're all on one thing. We have to make these decisions based on a whole bunch of different factors. Yes, we want to help the climate. Yes, we want to do everything we can to reduce the traffic going in and out of town. That's why I tried to, in my remarks, preface that I believe this is a unique site. This is a place. We look now at the developments right next door to this site. We look at, you know, we had the, what was this? Oh, I forget your address, 370 Latoria, something. Anyway, we look at, you know, the townhouse site, nice townhouse site, was done according to the standards of the day, I'm sure. And yet it uses a lot of overflow parking on Latoria Boulevard. Same thing for the single family homes on Ryder Hesdall, for whatever reason, you know, suites, garages, you know, gyms in the garage, whatever it may be. People are using extra parking than what everybody believed was required when the bylaws were written and the subdivision was developed. I believe that this site, being in this corner next to the high school, busy intersection, going to get busier, is one where we have to minimize the risk of requiring extra parking above and beyond what's on the site. You know, these noble things about let's reduce parking and, you know, get everybody, every 7-year-old riding an electric bike, and, you know, maybe a couple of 50-year-olds too. Great. I appreciate them. Let's do them. But let's look at the balance here. And in my humble opinion, in this site, that should steer us towards being conservative in our parking projections and not going optimistically, we might get away with this. Because if we optimistically think we can get away with that and don't, the consequences are far more severe than they may be in a bunch of other places. So that's why I'll support the motion.
I am not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to call the question. I want to be clear that this, the question I'm calling is the motion by Councillor Baxter to increase the parking to 1.6. This is not the bylaws themselves. So this is just the motion to that. Those in opposition, those in opposition, Councillor Logan and Martin, and Mayor Martin opposed. So that motion passes. So that becomes part of the bylaw. So now we are into the bylaw. Do I have a mover and seconder? I already have a mover and seconder? I do. Okay. So is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 10.2, 10.3. This is bylaw number 1911, bylaw notice enforcement 2021, first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I will be supporting the bylaw. This bylaw, because it's moving from our old MTI system to this new system, I may have the moniker wrong on that, has everything in it that that is on the books in Colwood. And I really think that it is heading us in a direction that is not to the benefit of a lot of members of this community. We have commercial trucks parking basically in the middle of the road, and they're fine. Nobody's going to bother them. And then you have somebody park their motorhome for a few days on the street in front of their house, and they are going to have problems because that is not allowed according to this bylaw. So to me, there's so much in here that is either unenforceable or not generally enforced that there is no way that I can support this bylaw whatsoever. I think Colwood needs to decide where it's going to enforce what, and this just creates a juggernaut of problems for the future.
I'm not seeing any other hands, so, oh, excuse me, I am. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. With all due respect to my peer, this modernizes what it is we're trying to achieve in bylaw enforcement. I think in no way or shape does this bylaw change the methodology used by our bylaw enforcement officers, whose mantra, as long as I've been here, or even on protective services, has been to educate first, and then as things don't change or people choose not to adhere to the bylaw, then there are some new tools available. And I think this just modernizes it. It certainly makes it more efficient for our bylaws officers. And I don't believe that the net wraparound effect of changing this bylaw means that we're going to become more aggressive or litigious and start issuing tickets wantonly. And I believe that that's, somewhat fear-mongering. So I believe these changes are necessary to address some of the issues that are brought forward by our community that relate to parking, that relate to RVs that are lived in different areas of the community, whether it be at the lagoon or in our existing neighborhoods. And I don't believe the intent is to nab someone who parks their RV or their trailer, for that matter, in front of their house while they're loading it up. I would have a problem with that. So I think that this is a big step forward. This also modernizes it and gives our local constabulary the ability to issue a ticket where one is warranted in an effective manner that it will take less time and require less paperwork. So those are some of my thoughts, and I wholeheartedly support this initiative and this modernization. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 10.4, bylaw number 1912, land use bylaw amendment 791 Drummond Way for first and second reading. Councillor Baxter.
I wish to move the readings of the bylaw, but I also wish to add something to this rezoning.
Okay, so can I get you to make the motion and I'll get seconder, and then what I'll do is come to discussion and you can make an amendment? Or do you want to make the amendment in the actual motion?
Okay, we'll do it simply. I'll move the bylaw and
I'll come right back to you.
Speak to the amendment.
Okay, thank you. So it's seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Baxter, go ahead and make the. So I've got that now.
Yeah.
So now you can make your amendment or.
Okay, so the thing that I picked up on about this development is all of the houses in BC now have to be built solar ready. And the cheapest way to install solar panels is on a roof that slopes towards the south, southeast, southwest, maybe even full west. All of these roofs slope north. And I understand why they did that. It's to reduce the apparent size of the houses, which matters in the first row of houses next to Drummond Road because the neighbors see them. But it doesn't matter in the rest of the houses as you go up the slope because they won't see all those houses. And even if they can, they're too far away. So what I want to do is have it put into the development agreement that all of the roofs beyond the initial line of houses along Drummond Way, the roofs will slope facing south. Perhaps staff could advise exactly how we do that.
Staff.
Brent's gone to bed.
Yeah, no, not bad. Sorry, not bad yet, Michael, or Council. But Dennis and I are kind of looking at each other for the best way to answer that. Dennis, would you like to take a shot at it first?
Through your worship, if I could suggest, I think this is probably a fairly major change to the application on behalf of the proponent. And perhaps council would entertain that this matter be referred back to the applicant for them to consider. And then we could come back to council with the best way to implement this recommendation.
Works for me.
So can I get a clarification through staff? Sorry, I've got first and second reading. Are you suggesting that we defer? Yeah. Am I still moving the bylaw forward? So like, or am I not, like we deferred something else so that it was coming back. So am I deferring the first and second reading of this? Is that what I'm doing?
If I may, I've moved the bylaw unless somebody's going to make. Sorry.
The second motion that you were talking, or the second motion that we were talking about the south facing walls. Staff have said they recommend you should refer it. Right now I'm on bylaws though. And so what, I'm not sure how I refer something within the bylaw.
Well, I think that what we can do is just, they will take the referral.
Okay.
And we'll carry on and we can change it at third reading.
Okay, good. Okay, then I'm solid with it. I think we're all solid with it. I'm not going to go to you, Yasmin, because I think we're good. Councillor Parkinson.
I mean, I made my case last week and I see where it's going, so that's fine. Can somebody clarify for me, suites? I still have the concern then from the architect's site plan that says use multifamily residential attached home occupation office secondary suite rooming of up to 2 bedrooms. Is it considered there would be suites in this development as well? Or is it presumably with the limited parking, that wouldn't be a good idea?
That's to staff. Go ahead, Yasmin.
There, through the chair to Councillor Parkinson. So the draft bylaw that is in front of you does not enable secondary suites or rooming permitted on the lands. So yeah.
That's fine.
That's it?
That's good.
Okay, great. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to call the question unless somebody else. Nope. Okay. So we're on first and second read. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're just leaving that. So I'm going to call the question then on this. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Great. And then a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Logan. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes.